got levels and basic color balancing techniques down, let's talk about curves. Curves is a really powerful tool for both setting contrast and for color balancing. Levels is great. It's really easy to understand. It's easier to look at. Curves is going to be a more powerful tool for you to use now that you're used to working in Photoshop. I'm going to copy my background layer and come down here to make a new adjustment layer, and I'm going to select curves. Now here I have my histogram just as like I normally would, and I can move my white point here. You see my white slider moving along the edge, and my black point here to set contrast. And this image is set just about right. There's actually some clipping happening over here, but this is a stock image I've pulled for you guys. So what I would do, like in levels, is I could set my contrast like this, keeping this line nice and diagonal. And then I would go ahead and close out of that curve layer. I'm going to open another curve layer. So again, whenever I'm using curves, I only want to set, unless I'm setting contrast, which I'll move 2 points, I only really want to plot 1 point at a time. It's easier to organize, it's easier to keep track of, and to go back and make changes. If I plot a point right in the middle of my curve line and pull this upwards, I'm changing the luminosity of the entire image. This is very different than brightness. Brightness is a terrible tool. It should never be used. All brightness does is actually add white to your image, so it's a white wash. It doesn't change exposure, and it doesn't change luminosity. So no brightness. And if I want to overall darken, again, I pull it so I have this nice rounded curve line here. I can do an overall darkening or brightening of the luminosity of the print. Nice smooth curve line here. I can also go under my separate channels, red, green, and blue, and I can start to affect them separately, which is really handy for color balancing. So the left-hand side of this curve represents my shadow details, and the right-hand side represents my highlight details. So what I can do here is I can, if I plot a point in the middle and drag up, I'm adding red to the image, and are subtracting red or adding blue to the image to get a better color balance. As you can see, this is really magenta, and adding a little blue to that helps it look a little bit more natural. What I can also do, if I want to get rid of this point, I'll click on it and drag it off the screen, is I can click a point in my shadow areas and I can just add or subtract red just in my shadow areas, which is a lot easier than selecting out my shadows with a selection tool or a lasso and trying to change it that way. This is a much quicker way to do that. And again, in the highlight areas, I can add or subtract red just in those highlight areas, which is a really cool tool for you guys to use. And I would just do one adjustment per curve layer. If you start to do a bunch on all the different channels, it gets a little bit confusing when you go back to adjust things. You have to go through all the menus and make sure you see all the adjustments. And if I'm really organized, I might label this red so I know that I've added or subtracted red on that curve layer.